So it's like food as a potion, but not as a potion, and instead actually done right. Because I think that's one of my big problems with Ultima 9 always, that you could eat food in that game, but it was just, there was no hunger meter, and it was just like, you know, a mini potion. So in that sense it was kind of stupid.
So of course the food system or the food mechanic would also be dependent on what genre the game itself would be.
Yeah.
But if we just try to think separately this food mechanic, that maybe that's the selling point, that you can then start building a game around.
Yeah.
Then there's no pressure on thinking about what genre it should be until the system has been developed.
Yeah. So you could make the system and then think, okay, what kind of game I could make around this system. So in that sense, first of all, something I'd like it to be like once again, I'm probably gonna use the word realistic every now and then, but let's just say to take like more things into consideration than just, you know, the amount of hunger you feel. So basically, like there would be benefits to fasting, or more like you could go for longer periods of time without food, and it would actually be beneficial for you in some way.
It instantly brings to my mind that it's gonna be pretty interesting. You have to balance. It's not good to eat all the time, but it's not good to eat
Never.
Or eat never.
Yeah.
We just watched this video about fasting periods, and some studies even suggested that you could fast for 30 days, and that could be beneficial for some health problems you have.
Yeah.
So there's one thing you have to make a decision on when developing this system, that what would be the beneficial time. Is it 5 days of fasting or 10 days?
Yeah.
Or would it be dependent on the food you eat prior to that?
Yeah.
That's another element you could add, is the types of food. If it's full of junk food, like carbohydrates, then it would have this very big downside of you having this ravenous hunger before you can even go to the fasting phase.
Yeah.
But if you ate more fat-based foods, it would be more easier to get the benefits of fasting, because there wouldn't be that very bad situation in the middle or before the fasting phase.
Yeah. So that's another thing I think would be really nice to have in that system, is that different kinds of food do different kind of things. And the other is, of course, that there would be sort of benefits, also like benefits to eating certain kinds of foods, depending on how you play the game or what you're doing. So in that sense, maybe you do want to like eat sugary drinks at some point of the game, and it's bad for you long term. Maybe it like slowly drops your like permanent stats, but at the same time it gives you like this energy boost for like a couple of minutes. So if you just want to, you know, speed run the game, then you can just have a Coca-Cola on your left hand and just, you know, keep drinking it or something like that, and your character will be very powerful for most of the game, but at the end that character is going to be like super weak, or basically you need to keep eating a lot of food to give you those temporary buffs, otherwise you can't make it. Or you can eat more healthily, and that just makes you, you know, get stronger slowly, but you know, you're actually leveling your character up. That might actually be like maybe the only way to level your character up, or at least if there's some other way to gain stat ups or level ups, then they would like enhance them depending on what you've eaten.
We already started thinking about, okay, you're talking about leveling up, so it's already kind of, that's already deciding that it's gonna have some kind of RPG elements.
In some way.
But I just want to take this thought and put it aside for a while. What other types of gameplays you could wrap around this kind of food system? Because I was thinking about, you talked about the sugary foods, because sugary foods, they taste nice, they are very desirable to eat, so it could be kind of moral booster for your player, as a player or a character. I'm starting to think about this Sims type of game where you just keep your kind of your pet well and healthy, but you have to keep them also happy and maybe that's another route we could take this to, but it's in the end we should start thinking where this system could go to, but I just wanted to take a side route right now. And
but because that's a good question that you asked, because I think it could work in almost any type of game. Like if you think about any type of platformer, you can eat food and that can give you stats up, because you can combine platformers with RPGs, and at the same time it can work with like action RPGs. It can work with strategy games where you're making the food for your whole village, so to speak, and that sort of decides how are your troops, are they going to be well off for the long game or just for a little while, and so on. And Sims games, that could work. So I think it could work in almost like any game type.
Because we could take or it's always good to take the MVP or minimum viable product route with game mechanics. Think about this very basic idea that your game would wrap around and have this satisfying gameplay loop on itself. But as Sakuna has already demonstrated, and many other games, that it can also have this very special mechanic, but it can be part of something bigger game on itself. So I'm really tempted to, or excited to see where this is going to go when we develop this system. Then we can start thinking about what is the minimum game that could run with this system. So as a part of an RPG is very far away already going, but just a thought. This about this system, where it could go.
And I think Sakuna is a good example in that it could actually, in Sakuna you grow the rice and that sort of acts as your permanent stat boosts. But it could also like you could forego all of that and instead just have the evening meals, and some of those would give you like small permanent boosts, and some would instead give you like very big temporary boosts. So that's just one way of using this system.
So we've already arrived to conclusions that there would be different types of food that give different types of benefits, but in the long run, the more fattier and kind of human proper food you give to your player character, the better it's gonna be in the long run. But the sugary stuff would have this temporary boost or some kind of moral boost if you have a party of people or you're managing a crowd of resources. So what other parts of this realistic game system we haven't really tackled yet? because the fasting is already something that's not very well kind of used in anything, not in games or in anything already. But are there any other? Of course, the proper nutrition overall, because you could only eat meat and live very well your life, but the reality might be that the quality of meat would also be a factor, because if it was very stressed out meat that was fed some soybeans all its life, it's not gonna keep your character alive or in a good health.
Yeah.
But if it was the grass-fed type, that animal that has lived a natural life, eaten stuff it should be eating and living its life like it should live it.
Yeah.
Then preferably even in this field or place that's not deprived of nutrition, like some farm factory or farming place.
And in a stress-free environment.
Yeah. So one would say that game would be the best kind of meat, because the stress-free part is kind of how stressed is an animal living freely their lives in the woods with predators or being there, biggest fear all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the most natural place an animal can be, their natural habitat, without humans intervening.
Yeah. And I guess another aspect of the game would have to be that, like, realistically you can, like we've seen in real life, you can eat any kind of shit for like 10 years and survive. So the game would have to be like take place within like the span of a lifetime or something like that. So within a very long period of time. And I guess like even Sakuna does do that. Of course, you don't see it in the characters, but our playthrough lasted something like 11 years or something like that. So that's one part, I guess, of the thing. And like the problem is that, food isn't something where you see the immediate benefits, especially. And that's why it's very easy to think that something is healthy and something isn't, because you're not really seeing those benefits until after. Like even with the ketogenic diet, the advice that I heard from people was, well, this was actually by Jordan Peterson. He was being interviewed in, who was that guy again? I don't remember. Joe Rogan. He said that, try it for a month. Like a month, it's not a very long time, but at the same time, I mean, it is quite much longer than a day or a week. Like if you're trying a carnivore diet for a week or a ketogenic diet for a week, you're just going to be miserable, probably. You're not going to see the positive changes. It's kind of like, stop smoking for a week. Yeah, you're going to feel very, very bad. So, in that sense, you need to see that, you need to have a long-term goal there, sort of. And also the benefits, you only start to see, like, okay, you ate shit for all your life, but you still lived until 50. And if you ate healthy, now you're going to live like 110.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, first of all, that the span of time needs to be much longer than most of the games. At least the feeling in the games that it takes some days or others. So that's already, the system will need it to have years of or tens of years of time span. And the other would be, what would be the goal of the game, and that's already it could be this kind of a health education game that would show you as a game what happens to you based on what you are deciding to eat during your life. And that's one aspect you could take into this system, that your goal is to see what happens to you.
I think something that might interest me even more is, you know, take the judgment out of the whole equation. So basically, not make it so that you're supposed to eat good food, but instead you can choose for yourself. And maybe for whatever reason, whatever the game is about, you feel like it's better to eat all the junk food and gain those temporary stats. And okay, junk food is like a wrong term there, because that's not even going to give you like beneficial stats. But it's something that gives you like a quick boost, and then you just live your life as that character. Like I don't know if you remember that game. I think it was Sword of Ditto.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was. It's in the same kind of graphic as that that one Zelda-like hand-drawn game. What was it again?
Oh, you
It
mean
has this girl.
It'll-do?
Yeah, it will do. Yeah. So it's kind of with the same sort of graphic. And the idea is that one day you wake up and you're the chosen hero and you go on a journey and you probably die, and then 100 years passes and another hero wakes up.
Now I remember, yes.
Yeah, so this could have basically a same kind of idea with that. Whenever your character dies, a new one arises, and it's just up to you to see what you feed them. And if you just feed them bad food, they die at the age of 10 or 20. But that's fine, because you'll get a new one, and okay, you need to start from the beginning, but maybe that's some part of your strategy. Or maybe you prefer to have this character live longer and they'll stay healthier, and you'll basically have this strong character for a long time that you don't need to retrain. Or maybe you like the fact that you need to start from the beginning many times over.
Yeah. What would the game give for the player? How would the game challenge the player? Because what you eat, or this food eating simulation game, would be pretty boring, or be very niched into for the market that really likes to have some kind of simulation in their lives.
Yeah.
But how would you make it more a mainstream thing that kind of accidentally teaches you the proper human diet,
Yeah.
but wouldn't judge any of the diets you choose to use, but somehow made it very satisfying to try this out and find out how you can progress. What would be the progress be? The end goal would be maybe that how long your character lives, but that's so far ahead. So what are the goals in between there that would make you wanna do that again and again and again?
Yeah. So of course, if we go that route, then the eating part wouldn't be like the essential gameplay loop. It's just one of the systems there that's there to teach you, or basically not to teach you, but just to help you make decisions about what you should do, and at the same time you just get this generic understanding of how food works.
There is also a possibility of making this kind of auto-playing game that the characters play on themselves and you don't make much input, like in this Miitopia game.
Yeah.
Then
maybe you're the chef. You're just deciding what these guys eat.
Yeah, actually there's this Me game.
Yeah, the Me Plaza game. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, you make food for the heroes, and if you make the exact stuff that they wanted, but just make it extra big and extra special, then the heroes will be stronger and they'll advance more. So I guess that could be one of the things, and I guess that might be interesting in the sense that sort of, maybe you start out as a novice chef and you start making all this delicious food, and people give you big ratings, but then you find out that the heroes are dying pretty young or whatever.
You'd have to be some kind of deity of nourishment or something like that, so that it would make sense that you live hundreds of years, generations.
Yeah.
That would be pretty nice, that you are this goddess or god who provides the food for the year,
Yeah.
and instead of being the guy trying to appease the gods to give you a good yield.
Yeah.
So you would be this god that decides what kind of yield their subjects would need to live
Yeah.
prosperous, not a prosperous life as an individual, but as a society. It would go kind of a civilization way, that way, or not civilization, but these black and white games kind
Yeah.
of. I'm more tempted to start to try to make this into a game that would, because if you make it mainstream enough, then you would have the biggest impact on the world.
Yeah.
If you want to teach this proper human diet with your system
Yeah.
as well. So the simulation or resource management game is kind of a turn off. Or
Yeah.
it's a bigger niche than the simulation game, but
Yeah.
it's still a niche. So how you make it into something that loads of players would gravitate towards.
I think I put it into some sort of action game, or either that or in a Sims kind of pet simulator. I guess those are the most popular.
Yeah, but
Maybe.
also games like Rock Band were very popular also, but those involved having a physical thing and feeling like
Yeah.
forming your own band, so it's kind of not the option in here.
Yeah.
Or we have to make some kinds of accessory pots and stuff to make your food in. But that's why Rock Band appealed to so many people, and Wii games, because you had something tactile. You didn't have to imagine things or
Yeah.
anything, but
And of
have
course,
a-
guitars are cool, so I guess that's part of the thing.
yeah, but that's just different type of game,
Yeah.
getting a lot of traction.
Like, in a sense, I guess it would be more like, Metroid isn't a good example. Castlevania probably isn't either. But like, still, something to that sense in some way. The best thing would probably be to put it into Call of Duty, but that's kind of troublesome because the soldiers are dying there all the time.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's kind of hard to say.
With a very involved system like this food system we're trying to come up here, is that it's always gonna be a little bit more niche thing, because the turn your brains off stuff like Call of Duties are the most mainstream you can get, or the mobile stuff you get on your phone for free or with very very little fee. So we are not trying to appeal to that kinds of market, but kind of think of how Breath of the Wild
Yeah.
got a big audience, or how this From Software's newest game, this
Elden
Ring
Yeah.
has also gained a lot of traction nowadays. It kind of feels like, remember when Grand Theft Auto 3 or 4 was very popular? It was every teen in our class played it because it was just so cool, and I think Elden Ring is starting to get that kind of traction right now, that's the game you challenge everyone to play,
Yeah.
and that's very involved RPG like sandbox game or open world game.
Yeah.
So that kind of game can succeed if they do. The gameplay loop is the king in there also, and that's the biggest part of gaining traction as a game.
Yeah.
Just trying to brainstorm what kind of game this could be, and appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But the system itself has to be very addictive
Yeah.
and satisfying. And if you get that right, then it kind of isn't that much of a big of a deal what genre it's gonna be.
I do, in a sense, want to see it in some sort of like RPG element, just in the way that, as I mentioned, the like strategic part, you know, you can make the decision of what you put into your character, and at the same time, like maybe the game doesn't really even like it doesn't really mention anything about the food itself. So you're basically eating what you think is good for you, and your character, when you get to the end game, your character actually isn't as good as it could be. And then you find out that, you know, actually, if you were eating these foods, then your character would like get progressively stronger, even though you've played 60 hours already and you're at the end game. And it would be something new for you to find out at that point of the game. And you could, you know, share that, like this sort of secret information that the game doesn't tell you to other people.
Yeah. One other fun thought I had, that what if this was an MMO game and it was at the start of the game, no one knows what the best strategy would be. It's not something that would be disclosed very clearly, but it would become very evident in a year or two that those people who live their lives in that game as a ketogenic eaters would be the best ones, and the others would be not as successful in this longevity
And that
aspect.
And that could actually work also in the sense that it's, especially if it's like some sort of survival game, it's not all about just eating the best diet, but also about surviving and about trying to eat that best diet, because you don't, maybe you're living in an environment that doesn't have any game, so there's nothing to hunt, and you have to grow wheat and other stuff like that, and you basically have to gimp yourself by eating something that isn't like the best kind of food for you, but still you have to sort of make it through somehow, and that would also play into the whole fasting thing. So maybe you'd like to. And one other thing is that and this is also many games don't make a distinction between like food and drink, I think. At least not most of the games that we talked about in the last video. But that's something that I'd also like to have, like a distinct food and drink. Or a distinction there. It's not just, you know, drink is something that also fills you a little bit, but it's its own thing. So, I mean, World of Warcraft, it does do a distinction there, in that, you know, food restores your health and drinks restore your mana. But also in this game it would be more realistic, of course.
Well, the difference between like beer and bread is that beer is just drinkable bread, essentially.
Yeah.
It's just a nutrition that's in the drink.
Yeah.
And it's kind of food, but the water itself, well, food itself can contain water, but with human diet it's pretty essential to drink separately your water or get some water as a water also.
Yeah.
To keep living.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point out that kind of it makes sense making drink the same as food, except for the water aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's the only problem sense there. Yeah.
But the survival aspect is also because Rust and some other games have been pretty popular. These survival games, and Minecraft is kind of a survival game too, if you want to play it that way.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not a bad genre decision to make for this kind of game, but it's pretty obvious. But that would be the easiest one to start with, and then you can start to develop the game, have more aspects to it. Going back to this longevity, or it has to take decades to see the effects, because that would be the realistic way of depicting the effects of food on you.
Yeah.
So would it be kind of this roguelike survival then? Would that take care of the...
Possibly.
Because roguelikes are, at least the games that I think about, are always about being so very short spurts of gameplay, and you sometimes, at some point, you just die and then you start over. But what if this was a game that takes place in 50 years, but it's a roguelike? But like in Sakuna, you can just compress it into some very sensible length, or you can put 1 year into, let's say, 1 hour is 1 day or something like that. So it doesn't feel like you're playing tens of years. But how would that time span be visible in that game? Because you can always just put a clock and make it say 1 day has passed, but if it doesn't affect the gameplay or game anyway, then it's not really.
Yeah, I mean, a day and night cycle or something might work, or like maybe, I guess a seasonal cycle might be better. So you have like a couple of days passes and now it's snowing because it's winter.
Yeah, and then we're going to the different seasons have different foods available. In the autumn you have the most abundant of foods because all the fruits and berries have developed and you get lots of stuff. This is starting to become like very... Be a human, live your life as a farmer. This is starting to go to the Stardew Valley territory, kind of. How do you manage your farm?
Yeah.
Because this is one other thing, because how you get bread, there has to be other humans to make that bread for you, or you make it for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm just... What kinds of foods we are going to get to our game?
I'm starting to think that it might be better if it's not a farming simulator. It's just about, you go and you either buy your food or you go and you hunt it yourself or whatever.
It has to be in the modern times, because we really need to have those donuts and Coca-Colas in the game to highlight, or for it to make sense that you can choose to take the sugar only route and see how that fares for you.
Yeah.
So it has to be modern times, or some kind of alternate universe, but that it's gonna take a lot of world building. So easiest route would be to make it be modern times, and you can always get those donuts, and you can always get that freshly hunted down game if you want. So it's kind of this city outskirts where you're going to live. You have this place where you can go to the store, or you can go to the forest, just like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can make a choice to live in the city, but then you don't have that. Or you have these processed foods available a lot better. But if you went into the forest, then you don't have these quick energy foods available, but you get the better game overall, or better food overall.
I mean, it might actually work in that sense that, maybe you start somewhere outside of a city, and it takes a lot of effort to sort of hunt food and prepare it and whatever, or well, not a lot of effort, but a little bit of effort, as opposed to then you get to a city and you can just buy stuff for very cheap, and it gives you a lot of energy. And
Yeah, because all these food choices, like you said, we shouldn't judge anyone for. There wouldn't be any bad choices to make. You just have to witness for yourself and make your own conclusions on, is it good that you lived 20 years of life and achieved things X, Y, and Z, but this with the sugar diet, as opposed to having this hunter-gatherer diet for all your life and living to the 80s.
Yeah.
That's another aspect, because living in the wilderness means you because human longevity is also based on medicinal science.
yeah,
We live this long because we have good medicine and healthcare systems.
and security, of course.
So this is gonna become pretty complicated game, but we could tackle all those problems if we really wanted to make this the food mechanic only game. Then we have to make it so it's. I'm thinking of a Earthbound kind of city where there's this big city, but there's just animals somehow live in there, and you just living in the city. You can choose to, or the stores have a good variety of foods, or there are different kinds of specialty stores where you can buy either the freshly hunted meat or go to the vending machine and get your quick shot of sugar.
And it could actually be that it's not even all that clear, in that maybe, you know, if you want meat in the city, you have to go to this like a shady looking dealer in the back alley or something, and that's actually like somebody who deals in actual farm meat, and it's actually like good meat.
Yeah.
But it seems very shady because, you know, the environment or something around that person, it doesn't look like that would be the best kind of guy. But if you get to know that person, then you find out that it's actually like fresh meat coming straight from the farms or whatever. So there's all that sort of, and I think it could be like just using game mechanics, you could, you know, simulate that experience that, you know, you lived outside and making food was hard, and now you come to the city and buying food is very easy, and you look at the stats and it says, oh, this one candy bar gives me like plus 100 energy, so that's instantly my energy bar full, and it only costs $1, as opposed to, you know, using 5 whole precious minutes of hunting food outside. And, you know, from a gameplay perspective, it seems like a good idea to just buy tons of candy bars and just eat them, and it's only later you notice that actually your hunger meter or health is starting to go down, your maximum health is reduced or whatever. Something start to happen.
Yeah. Okay, we've been narrowing down this pretty nicely, but it's not yet clear if it's gonna be. This is starting to sound like more of a. You talk to people, but what is it you get? Are you gonna fight monsters in the city?
Yeah, what's the point of the game? Well, one route is to go from like this. Well, I haven't played any Persona games, but sort of like a Persona kind of route, in that you are in an environment that has people and everything in it, but maybe there's some, you know, astral world or like some dimension there, or some bad stuff happens and you're actually hunting in the night or whatever. So I guess that's one route.
I'm just wondering if you I'm coming back to this, not judging anyone for their choices, but what's beneficial if you went the bad route, kind of eating only the sugary candy bars all your life? What would happen? Would you just don't have enough time to see all the game has to offer, or what's it gonna
Yeah, what's
be?
the negative?
Or is it that it could also be like this player you're playing, they're kind of eternal beings that never die, but they are like humans in that sense that if you eat badly, then they will become obese and not well and have very little health. And you can reverse that by going to ketogenic or any other eating habits.
Yeah, I think there's multiple routes there, of course. One is that you see like immediate effects on your character, lower health or lower agility or something like that. But the other thing is, of course, if the character dies, then we could, have that system where you get a successor. And the problem or the thing is that you do get to continue the game, but you just have to start the character sort of leveling from the beginning. So you start as a young child again, so to speak. As opposed to that character you had leveled and had all these items and everything. So that's at least one route or one possibility.
It kind of, in that sense, it becomes kind of a story of that place where people come and go, live their lives. But what would be the end goal here? Is it some ancient menace trying to destroy the earth kind of plot, or what is it that you're gonna go accomplish with these dietary habits of yours?
Yeah, that I'm not sure.
Well, perfect games are something you don't really need the ending, but most people, like I am, I really like to have some kind of conclusion for the game.
I think the conclusion is important.
But it really depends on how big the food system aspect should be, or is it tied to this food system somehow, the end goal, or is it just there?
Yeah, because I see that it doesn't have to be tied to that. And because of that reason, I think there's too many options with the story, probably. I mean, if you think about the Asian martial arts game, Sifu, in that game, when you die, you just, come back and now you're older or something like that. So in the same sense, you could see that the story is about some syndicate or some real people, or it could be, like I said previously, some sort of astral plane with demons and monsters in our real world, but you just need to traverse there and then come back and live your normal life during the days. So I just see there's a lot of options there. So and
nice answer. But this is how we come to the conclusion, trying to think of the proper. And yeah, you could ask if this is part of the food system at all.
I'd like to say that no.
Yeah, but what's gonna be satisfying about this food system? I'm getting back to this. If you take the sugar road and there's an end game, is it just that you have worse stats and you could clear the game with that, but it's much harder? You have to be more nimble with your fingers or your sword play, or have good patience, a lot of patience to take down this thing, whatever the end game is gonna be.
I'd like to imagine that the game is long enough that unless you're very, very good at the game, then you're not, if you keep eating nothing but snack bar, then you're not going to make it to the end. Your character is going to die, whether that's at 20 years of age or 50, that's not going to be enough to make to the end of the game.
So would that be the goal of the game, to keep yourself, you're kind of some type of chosen one, or the one who has to bear this burden of winning something? Let's say world is gonna end and you're the only person that's gonna do it, but it's gonna take 100 years to get there.
Yeah, something like that.
And you have to keep yourself alive long enough to, because the end of the game, there's nothing challenging at the end of the game. You're just the chosen one who will smite the dragon. But as long as you're alive, you're gonna do it. But the challenge is keeping yourself alive long enough. And going to this realism realm, you'd have to live longer than humans tend to live. That would be pretty fun. There's this life expectancy that people die at 80 or 90, and you have to get over that, and well over that. You have to be older than oldest person ever lived, some 130 or 150 years old. You have to win the odds, go against the odds of human life expectancy.
Yeah, I think that might work. It goes a bit away from the like the mainstream gaming type, but I mean, if we're thinking it would be like a roguelike, but there's this extra element of you can't just, it's not enough that you survive all the assassins from all these religions or whatever who try to take you down before you make it all the way to 100 years, but you also have to manage your food, what you eat.
Yeah.
So that sounds like that sort of deal. And the other one other option would be that you are basically, you're always going to make it to that 100 year, but it's just about whether that one character dies and the soul moves on to the next avatar, whatever. And then you just need to start from the beginning, and that's sort of your punishment for not surviving long enough. So you need to start anew, and now your progression is lost, and okay, you maybe this character can make it to 100 years, but at the same time, well, okay, that could be, so it's not something, it's not an event that's going to happen after 100 years from the like first character, but like whatever your character is, you're going to have to make them live for 100 years. But the problem there is, I guess, it does take away from the fact that in that sense we're basically taking the Ultima 4 route, which is that you can play evil character, so to say. You have to play according to our rules, which is that you have to eat healthily. So it does go a bit against that, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, Ultima 4 is pretty unique in the sense we have a lot of games like Mass Effect that give you the option of being sort of evil or sort of good, but there's pretty few games that, you know, force you to be this paragon of light.
But I don't know if that's a bad thing, because one game type is kind of this puzzle that you have to figure out what the game makers want you to do in this game, and it's made in very satisfying way.
Yeah.
Not this that haha, you didn't make this very precise movement right here or something like that. But I think it could be pretty. It's a long puzzle to solve for you. How do I make it to the end? And it could play into this this social aspect of this kind of game, that having a forum or place where people gather together and discuss how we crack this game, how do we get to the end, have this end goal. I'm thinking about No Man's Sky, and the developers told about this, that the game is there's the center of the universe somewhere in there, you have to find it, or some this kind of place, and I don't know how many days it took, but people found it in the end.
Yeah.
So having this kind of nugget of information thrown at the players, and that this is what you're going to get at. Now find your route to it.
Yeah.
But it has to be very satisfying the way to there.
Yeah.
And those people who aren't very keen on finding that end game or finding the end of the game, there needs to be something in the game itself. Maybe the sugar only diet living would be satisfying in some way. Maybe it's about you being the chosen one, and what is it what you want to do with your life? Are you gonna grasp your destiny, or are you gonna live it the way you want to live it?
Yeah.
And we just provide this sandbox of a city or environment where you can live your life as you want to fantasize yourself living your life as, but there's this end goal that this very specific type of life way of living to get there.
Yeah. It almost sounds like if we go that route, then it would almost have to be like a secret ending. That if you do survive for 100 years or even over that, then something special happens, and it's not even told in the game. You're just playing it as a roguelike, and you're making it to 40 years or 60 years or whatever. And it's those few people who found out, oh hey, I lived to 100 and something spectacular happened. But if you,
There needs to be these kinds of breadcrumbs somewhere, maybe in the age 100, that hey, if you live, you could live longer. What happens when you live longer, and then the breadcrumbs become more abundant the closer you get to the end.
Or at least something like you can see the world change as you play. So even if your character only lives for 20 years, you can see that the world has changed, and you can, okay, let's try another run, and now your character makes it to 40 and you saw that, oh, the world changed a lot again. I wonder what it's going to be at so and so many years. So I guess that could be another thing.
Yeah, and I was going to say this earlier but forgot, but because the premise could be that all the characters you are playing as are living the same timeline. You are just trying this character out and they're living their lives, and oh well, he died at 60, then you start another character who was born at the same time. Everyone was born at the same time or started their life, so we can really very well skirt or prevent the problem of this something happening in 150 years. It's just every character you're playing are living the same timeline.
Yeah, they're basically people who were just born in the same day, so to speak. I mean, this would be like, I guess, impossible to implement. Well, not impossible, but really hard. But one thing that might be really interesting is that, you know, you play a character and let's say that character dies at age 40, and now you start another character, and that character you played previously is in that world, and the character does all the things that you did during those last 40 years.
You build yourself this path.
Yeah, sort of like an NPC that walks according to those paths. And of course, if you do come by that character, then you can attack them or whatever. So you can sort of change that person's life by prematurely killing them, or just looking at them going through the routes and doing the stuff that they're doing or whatever.
Yeah, but even the making your own NPC aspect is pretty interesting. If you can do nothing about them, then at least it's very neat to have your own characters live their lives.
Yeah.
And you can start stalking them.
Yeah.
And they would kind of serve a purpose also, as a reminder of, okay, what did I do with that character? Okay, he went to the store and blah blah blah. It would be very neat to spend time just stalking around your previous characters and just reminiscing of those moments you had with that character.
Yeah. or you can even see them as sort of ghosts, or like you're getting this sense of deja vu that you've been here, and it's actually because that sort of happened in an alternative universe or something. So yeah, that could be sort of interesting. It's just I don't think it's technically all that feasible. Well, I don't know, because it would have to track all your movements and everything and keep them recorded somewhere throughout the entire game.
But when you think about it, the games that do have NPCs with their daytime routines or day-night cycle routines, they have also this data somewhere.
Yeah.
The game would just have to record that data of your
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, it's a recording that it's going to be probably pretty massive. But aside from that, yeah,
That
might
could
be
be something
interesting.
that's gonna be pretty feasible nowadays with powerful machines we already have.
Yeah,
But that's a neat little side thing that could be pretty nice having in this game. But the main meat of the game would be having multiple characters, and they're just they're just living the same timeline, and there's this end goal of living 150 years and you get something.
yeah. I mean, one interesting thing about the meeting your past self would be like, if you remember that at the age of 25 you had this really powerful weapon, you found it somewhere, then you can just go and wait for your old character at their house or whatever, and you can ambush them and you can take their weapons or items at that point. So that's kind of like an extra layer of strategy in making your character survive.
Yeah, but that aspect is something that's nice to have. It's a nice to have thing.
Yeah, it's just a tangent to this game.
But that's already putting something very interesting in this game. That's the goal is to teach people what is a proper way of living human life and eating human food. But already having these kinds of aspects puts some curtains in front of that idea, or us trying to teach people the proper eating, and it's making it a very interesting game
Yeah,
that's silently going to teach you something at the end of the day.
yeah. So of course a very big deal about the game would have to be that it's not advertising itself as an education game in any sort of the way. It would have to be some kind of whale in front of it to make it seem that the game is really worth getting for some other reason.
But the end goal of the game would be living your life or eating as healthily as possible to attain that 150 year mark. But how could this hook the players to start the first 30 minutes of gameplay? What would make them want to play 2 more hours or 6 more hours? What would be the satisfying gameplay loop in this kind of game?
Yeah.
And that's a very big question, because you could go to the simulation route. It's all about the food and finding the perfect food, exploring the city, the stores, the places you get your foods. And also do you start your game from birth, or do you start from some age where you genuinely decide for your own food or what it's gonna be?
Yeah.
Because if you start at 0, then you have to live through a childhood and adulthood, or teenage years and adulthood and elderly years.
Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily good. Well, it depends on the type of the game.
Well, it's very visual representation of your nutrition also. If you eat well, you grow up faster to be bigger. or something like that. Those kinds of aspects change depending on what you eat, and also on the elder end of your life, your body keeps younger, or younger looking for a longer time. It could be you could live to 80 and still look like the 30-year-old adult or something like that. You could start making those kinds of visual cues of I lived to 40 and started looking like a grandpa at age of 30 because of my food choices.
Yeah. I think like of course that's not realistic, but I think it's a good way of visualizing things. So I think it would be something, and it could be even be like, I don't know how we go about it. Like, can you redeem yourself? Like, or is it like you have this candle that you're burning and it's just about how quickly you're burning it? Or could it be that, you know, you're a 40-year-old grandpa and then you're like, you know, I'm gonna start eating nothing but meat now, and you actually start getting younger?
Maybe a little bit. But maybe first half of your life would be about getting that candle as long as possible, and then at age of 50 or maybe it would depend on the food you eat, but at some point your candle growth has stopped, and then you start burning it. You go to that elder or that phase where your body isn't naturally growing up anymore or developing anything anymore. Then it starts burning and inevitably it starts to burn the candle, but you can affect how fast it burns and maybe give a little bit of length back with specific food choices.
Yeah.
But that would make it more kind of understandable if you start the realism part comes into play, because when you're 0 you have parents that or guardians that will keep you fed, so it's gonna be something like are you gonna be the parent at first, and when you get out of the growth phase you become that person? Or are we gonna bend realism a bit and make a 0 years old person who just starts making decisions for themselves from the beginning?
I mean, one opportunity there is to basically add a bit of randomization, like in all old RPGs in D&D sort of games. You throw a dice and that determines your stats for your character. So in a sense that could be that you watch your character grow and being fed from like 0 to 18 and it's randomized what your parents feed you. So that sort of determines what you start, what kind of stats you start your game with, and how tall you be. Maybe there were parents who like starved you to death, or maybe you were born in poverty.
Poverty?
In poverty, and you didn't get enough food to eat altogether or something, and then you could end up like a short person or whatever. And then at the age of 18, you're like sort of awakened to, you know, I'm gonna make my own decisions now.
Yeah, that also adds that aspect that I really like people to understand that your life hasn't been a bad life if you lived your first 30 years in some way, and then you are having this very big negative feelings or your regrets of your previous life just because you were a dumb young adult or dumb young teenager.
Yeah.
I really like that idea of having this kind of age of 18 would be where you actually start your gameplay, but before that you see this starting point for your character.
And I guess other thing that you could maybe decide in the game is where do you start? Because you maybe you want to skip like those first 20 years, in that you actually want to start the game as a 40-year-old. So now you only have like 60 years to the end of the game or your goal. But at the same time, you don't get to make decisions, so it's kind of randomized, or it's up to luck what your character eats in the meanwhile. One thought I had about how the game might work is that maybe this sort of reminded me of SteamWorld Dig, which is a game where you're sort of living in a town and you have a lamp and you go down to a cavern basically, or mines, and you dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and every day you sort of run out of light, and at that point it becomes really hard to see, and that means that you need to go back up to the town. So that's one kind of thing that we could maybe work on, so that there's some place that you're digging deeper or higher or whatever into, and you always sort of have to come down to eat or whatever, replenish your materials or other items that you've lost on the way. So that could be probably one thing. And like at the start of the game, it might seem like natural, to take those candy bars with you and eat a big breakfast, and then take a lot of lunch boxes with you and go down and eat those lunch boxes. And then eventually you find out that okay, you can actually do well with just water for a long time, and maybe you should actually have some, I don't know, dried meat or something like that with you. And well,
are you talking about SteamWorld Dig or the possibilities
the
of
possibilities of this game?
Yeah.
So SteamWorld Dig, you're playing as a robot, so there's no food involved there. There's just the light.
Yeah, I just got lost where you started talking about this game and not that game.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the city, and this is gonna have to be modern times for this food mechanic to have it be as robust as possible, because we want to have those heavily processed stuff as well as the fresh foods.
Yeah.
So those are where we already narrowed this down, but we don't have to don't have to think too deeply, but the gameplay itself has to be, it's about this food mechanic and how it's gonna play its role in this potential game. And it's part of this living your life longer than any human could live. And it's pretty fantastical element living to 150, but it's gonna just highlight how your food choices really matter for your own health and living expectation. Are there any other aspects to this food mechanic, or should we somehow try to
wrap things up?
This up somehow?
There's at least one other thing that I'd like to, well, of course it's about where are you getting the food, because one thing that I was thinking at some point is that it's also possible that the food is sort of like just lying around, like in Castlevania or whatever, and it's more about you actually have to actively make your character not walk on that candy bar, because otherwise they will just automatically consume it. So that's one of the distinctions, like are the items just there lying around, or is it that you need to actively go and find them, or not items but the food items. So that's, I guess, one aspect. But
yeah, the most simple kind of game would be some kind of labyrinth game where there's all these routes you could take and you just have to make decisions where you turn next. So it could be as simple as that. But if you want to make it more free roaming feeling, and that you are making really making yourself all the decisions and kind of playing your game or playing the game the way you want. And most people would be satisfied with what they've succeeded in the game, but there would be those enthusiastic people who just are wondering how long can you live,
Yeah.
and then the game really starts to give these gifts, prizes for getting to 100 and then getting to 110.
Yeah.
So it's giving some good stuff or something good for the effort of trying to find the actual end of the game.
Because I see one one possibility is also that all the food items are just stuff that you find, and they all give you energy or something, and it seems like they're all good. There's like nothing inherently negative about them, but your character just ends up dying at 50 or 60, and you think that okay, I guess that's just the nature of this game because it's a roguelike. At some point your character gets disease and they die, and it was just bad luck that the character got like type 2 diabetes. And then maybe you read a walkthrough or maybe you try out something different and you actually find out, oh, I can actually affect these. So that is, I guess, kind of like real life, in that there are all these diseases going around and we just think that okay, it was just bad luck. And I guess in some cases it is, but there are many things that we can affect by changing our eating habits. So we could also simulate that sense of not being able to understand it within the game, I guess.
Yeah, but a good game also gives just enough hints or information on itself.
Yeah, and I think it might work, especially if it's like, what did your character die to? Well, he got type 2 diabetes. So maybe I don't know, maybe you go and you Google, okay, I keep getting type 2 diabetes, what am I doing wrong?
Okay, the Google aspect is already a little bit turning off for me, because the game itself has to be somehow informative about that. It's gonna be more niche game if you have to Google stuff.
Yeah.
That's not to say that you have, for the end game, to get the end game you might have to Google stuff, but you have the chance at least to do it legitly on the game itself.
Yeah, but I think like maybe it's like a debuff, that type 2 diabetes, and you look at it and what it says is that, you know, maybe you shouldn't have eaten all the sugary stuff or something, so it does give a hint like that.
Yeah, but I was trying to get with the information, how much information the game is gonna give you is that if you eat that candy bar, will it already take a pixel out of your health bar or something at that same instant? And you don't necessarily notice it because it was 1 pixel length. Yeah. But if you eat those candy bars a lot more, then after 2 hours of gameplay, you look at your health bar and wondering, was it that?
Was it that short?
Yeah.
I mean, that as well, I think might work very well. Of course, in one sense, it can make the player sort of angry, but I think that's just a good thing, because there was this one MMO that I played when I was younger. I don't remember the name of the game, but there was one part where I went to a place and there was some pretty tough monster there, but I managed to beat it by basically, it was in some basement, I think. So I went down the basement and hit it a few times and walked the stairs up and went somewhere to heal. And after I beat it, I started looking at my experience points, and I noticed that it was really low, like I had actually lost levels. And then I started looking at the combat log, and it was some sort of monster that actually drained your experience with every attack. And that made me really angry, of course, because I'd lost like hours and hours of progress. But yeah, thanks to that, I remember that.
You are
whole thing.
you're telling the tale to me now.
Yeah. So in that sense, and especially if the player is very well aware that, you know, this game of ours is a roguelike. So in that sense, it can be sort of like that sort of prepares your mind for the fact that it's going to end tragically at some point. And at that point, I think it's, you know, fine that you notice at some point that, you know, did I always have this little health? Oh, I'm pretty sure that it was 100 at some point. Why is it 50 now? What have I done wrong? And then you sort of start looking at, whoa, now it's 49. What did I do? All I did was eat a snack bar. Oh, that's the reason. So, and yeah, now you're angry because sort of your run is ruined because, or you feel like your run is ruined. Maybe you also feel like, okay, if you're a positive person, okay, what can I do to remedy this situation? But at the same time, your run is ruined, and now you'll remember that, okay, candy bars are not good for you.
But it always has to be worth it to start again or start a new game, because if you anger the player and they think it's not worth it to try again, then they're gonna abandon the game.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that might help with that is that, you know, if every food does that in some way, so you'll pretty quickly notice that, okay, something's gone down and something's gone up, and that way you'll start to actually pay attention to the foods, you know, what is actually, you know, making these things. And then you'll start to get into this mindset that, okay, eating food, I need to sort of manage what I'm eating. And then you may get into all this disease territory. When your character gets older, they get diseases and sort of recognize that they're food related also. So
but then we'd have to somehow also implement this fasting mechanic and how to convey this to player that it's okay to be without eating.
Yeah. I mean,
what would be a natural way to make a player spend 3 days without eating? Because I think it would be very natural to try to eat all the time, because that's very natural to think that just eat a lot of good stuffs and you're gonna live a healthy life. But then how would the player understand that, okay, instead, not only do I have to watch what I'm eating, but I also have to watch how often I'm eating.
I think one of the ways would be, you know, that maybe there's a hunger meter and it goes to 0, and what you find out is that nothing happens. You're not losing any health. Well, maybe there's like a blinking red whatever, you know, showing you the emotion that, you know, you're really ravenous, you're really hungry, but you'll go there and nothing happens. So it's sort of a thing that you need to, well, maybe there's a hint to it in the game, but that's one way to, you know, maybe at some point you're just not getting food and you just find out that, okay, there's this blinking light all around the screen, so it seems like I'm taking damage, but I'm not. And you'll find out if you keep doing it that it just goes away eventually, and you're still not taking damage and you haven't eaten anything for 2 days.
Yeah, the blinky red thing, that's gonna be an indicator that's a bad thing. That's how game says it's a bad thing, but how do we make it neutral that player itself thinks it's a bad thing, but it's not. There's this hunger meter, but when it goes to 0, and then it's gonna then start to become a problem, not eating.
Because that's the other problem. Well, other problem to solve. And like, is there a separate like thirst meter, or is that just, or maybe there's no hunger meter, maybe there's just I'm not really sure. Like, maybe there's no meters, there's just this, you know, that, you know, red blinking light, which is sort of giving you this impression, or not impression, but you know, your body is telling you that it needs food, and it's actually a false alarm, but it's telling players something.
Yeah, the hunger part also, you could make just a text saying I'm hungry, but it should have some kind of gameplay effect to make it impactful.
Yeah.
Just having a text or number go to 0 is just okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm making my character suffer, but I'm not actually suffering because it has to have some kind of gameplay effect
And
also.
that's why I keep talking about the red light, because I think that's something that's going to bother you, because it's all there in the screen and you can't really see well.
Yeah, okay, now I understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
so it's
talking
not-
about hunger, not the fasting, but the hunger.
Yeah,
You
the
have this-
hunger.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But when, how do you get to the fasting period? The fasting phase,
Yeah.
and how do you make that? How do you not tell to the player or make the player understand that how many days it's a good thing to have the character fast?
Yeah.
Or would it be the same as with eating food, that you can see the numbers go up and then at some point they don't go up, and then after a few days they start going down again, something.
Because this is one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, but I think it's very important for games to have this sense of mysticism, sense of mystery. And I think fasting is one of those things we could use in this game, in that you're sort of going into this unknown territory. Your vision is blurred and the screen is red, and it seems like your character is dying. But then you just keep going for a couple of hours and it goes away. And now you're in fasting, and now you're not hungry. And you're like, how long can I keep this up? I don't know. And maybe at some point you do that for a day, you do that for like 5 days, and now you see the red again. And now you're like, oh, is this serious? Or can I go even longer? Or am I going to die to this? So that's sort of like in real life, like I fasted for several days at a time, and it is like, that's the sort of mentality that I'm getting in real life as well. Like, I haven't eaten anything. I keep drinking water, I keep drinking tea, but I haven't eaten anything for 3 or 4 days. Like, am I going to die tomorrow if I keep doing this? And sort of, I think that would be a good way to simulate that.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about how do you, I don't want to say tell or push player, but how do you, unless you're Fraser Agar from Video Games Awesome, most of people might be just, oh no, I have to keep this hunger meter up all the time.
Yeah.
Like me, I would be that kind of
Yeah.
person, definitely. What would encourage people to try out things without? Well, you can feel bad at games. It's not a bad thing to feel bad in games, but I'm just, because I really hate those big mystery games that are just throwing you in there and not telling you anything, any way or any time. I'm just trying to, if there's ideas on how you can make a person understand that you could try this out for, or put them into a situation where you are in a prison for some reason, they're not feeding you, and you are understanding, wait, I'm getting better here.
Yeah. I think, there needs to be some sort of, something to sort of nod to it. But I think it can be something, first of all, the thing I want to avoid is that it needs to be like a not scripted event, because that's sort of like, hey, you stupid player, why don't you understand that you can just go for a long time without eating? But like, one thing, maybe there's like some old hobo or whatever who's like, I haven't eaten for 2 days and I feel great. Something like that. Like, or just saying that, did you know that you can go for a long time without eating? You should try it sometime. Just, one line of dialogue by some random NPC, maybe like once in the game.
Or the game itself has these kinds of events that you yourself can trigger. by
Yeah.
playing the game. You do something bad and cops get you and you're in jail
Yeah.
for 3 days and you get to experience few days of hunger. It's some kind of this place where there are no human rights within prisoners. They're not giving you any food because they think it's a bad thing not to give food to your
Yeah.
prisoners. And then that's actually the place where you realize, oh, my stats are going up after 3 days of fasting.
Yeah.
Or maybe, yeah.
Yeah. That.
But something like that. You have this sandbox of a game where you could get yourself in these places or events that introduce you to different types of diets, kind of.
Yeah. And I guess one that might work is especially if we think about that, going in the jail situation, is that you're thrown into jail and the game tells you that, you've been in the jail for 2 days. It sort of skips that period of time. And now you're out of the jail and you haven't eaten. Maybe you can see the meter that it's empty, but you don't see the red outline, so you're not hungry. And one of the things is maybe you can, maybe you think it's a glitch that you can get into that state, but then you actually go and look at your buffs or something and it shows that you have this fasting buff or something, and that maybe makes you connect the dots. So that could be one way.
Yeah,
So-
but I was trying to add that this could go with any types of diets that you
Yeah,
enter a
of
party, 2 weeks long party that's only junk food available and you can't get out of there.
Yeah.
You're just eating the bad food, or you are somehow get into the forest, or you take part in a group that goes hunting and you're living a few days there,
Yeah.
hunting game and eating like a hunter, like the other hunters are there, and you can see what that how that affects your health. These kind of events that you could do in the city, or go to places, or start some hobby, or
Yeah.
these kinds of neat situations. That's kind of also what might interest players, to find out what this place has to offer. Go find stores, go find the open door or something,
Yeah.
or answer to your emails, or answer to your phone. And your friend texts you, hey, we have a rave party for 3 days. Wanna come in?
Yeah.
Something like that. Sandbox of events you can take part in,
Yeah.
and they kind of, you make the choice, but then when you make the choice you get this confined environment where we as game makers can decide that this is a place where you can never drink, or this is a place you are never going to get food until you get out.
Yeah.
And those kinds of situations would teach the player, or give this pretty good place to see what this specific kind of event gives to your player,
Yeah.
or just make them healthier, or not not better, or get a disease or something. Yeah.
This actually ties with another game idea that I had some point, which was food related, in that it's just, the game is nothing but like this small screen, and your character sort of comes from the right side to the screen, and that's sort of a situation that you're on, and it's just a situation during your day when you make a decision about food. So basically the first screen is just you appear on breakfast, and you have like 4 choices, and you get to choose what you want to, which one of those 4 choices you take. So, and basically how, let's say you eat cereal, okay, that's just that event, and immediately the screen goes black and you come back, and now it's lunchtime, and now it's just the next 4 options, and once again you get to choose. And how the game would work is that it super amplifies the effects of those foods. So if you eat cereals, you're immediately like 100 kilograms more fat. And if you eat something more healthier, you're immediately like you lost 20 kilograms. So basically, it would just be like this, you know, mind game remainder where you just make these choices to sort of remind you over and over about what sort of things you can do and how they affect your body, and you immediately see the results. So I guess that's sort of party situations and other. It reminded me that it could work in this kind of game. And one of the events would be like, you know, come to the party, we're gonna be there for 3 days, and you go, and now you get those specific events.
Yeah, because I'm always worried if a game has very involved or complicated mechanics. It's very important at those points to somehow isolate the player into specific situations so that they can safely and in very casually or not in a hurry to get familiarized with those mechanics one at a time. But when it's this game we are thinking of or planning here, then if it's a free roaming or open world place, but all the places you go to are these kind of isolated or very distilled experiences that kind of are easy places for us as game makers to teach players stuff if they want to be taught stuff.
Yeah.
And they are still feeling like they're in control because they were the ones who chose to go there in the first place. And it's very natural if you're in a jail, there's not much to do.
Yeah.
If they are very these natural events where it's very understandable that you have only chips to eat at a party, then that's how it is gonna be for a few days.
Yeah. And I guess one thing there is, of course, that it's not just, well, okay, I mean, if it's a role-playing game, maybe you have like a stat for, what is this, like self, like how good you are at saying no to stuff. So if you're somebody who gets addicted to things easily or just has no self-control, then maybe, you know, you say that, yes, I want to go to the party, and it immediately just shows that, yeah, you ate a lot there. But if you have self-control, then you're actually in the party and you can actually, you know, make decisions there and choose no. Well, overall, I guess that part might be better if it's not in like self-decided by the game. Or, well, I don't know, because that might be one other thing that the game teaches you is that, you know, in real life you think that, okay, so I can go to the party and I can say no, but the game shows you that, hey, you have bad self-control. There's no option, or basically there is, but you can choose it because that's how little self-control you have. And that can sort of teach you that, you know, it's not enough to go to the party and try to say no because you just can't.
Okay, I'm starting to think, I already said that if it's very complicated, it's gonna be, and especially if we want it to be more mainstream, then it's gonna be a bit more simple.
Of course.
A bit simpler, but I started to think in this Pokemon logic where you level up your Pokemon and the Pokemon gets new moves. So maybe eating your foods, it has these invisible stats that are not very important for the player, but are important for game makers to decide, okay, now this number went up enough that they have self-control now. They get these kinds of moves in their lives.
Yeah.
This self-control, or what other abilities you would get.
Yeah,
With-
stuff like, well, of course, hunger. How
Yeah.
how ravenously hungry you feel.
And how fast you get hungry and
Yeah.
how long it will take to get out of that ravenous hunger
Yeah.
mode,
Hmm.
and how much fat you have in your body.
Body, yeah.
Yeah.
So that would affect like agility or dexterity, and of course how well you sleep.
And
If
how
there's-
long you can fast, because
Yeah.
if you have no fat to burn, then
Yeah,
it's gonna start burning your muscles and your
Mhm.
proteins.
yeah,
But yeah, it's gonna have this, or at least I think it's very interesting to have these abilities pop up to your character. And that's one incentive to keep feeding your character different stuff and trying out things. And it gives you a sense of progression. And sometimes you lose, like if you start eating those sugary foods, you are gonna lose that self-control aspect
yeah.
or ability from you, and the no buttons disappear.
Actually makes me think that basically if you're in that party situation and you sort of you walk by a bowl of Cheetos or something, your character automatically tries to grab them, and you have like a mini game that you have to quickly, or a quick time event that you have to play to, you know, keep away from doing that or whatever. I don't know, maybe that's a bit too apparent that it's not a good thing, but I don't know. But it might actually be like, you know, if the idea is that you're there for a reason, like you need to go to that party to, I don't know, meet some specific person, or depending on what the game is, I don't know, assassinate somebody or talk to somebody, make some connections, whatever. So basically there's all these things that are trying to keep you from that objective. And it's not just, you know, Men in Black shooting at you with guns, but you know, stuff that you're trying to not to eat, and people who are like, hey, don't go there, come here instead, and you know, let's play a trick on this guy, and all sort of stuff that will end up badly.
I got this thought in my head about maybe this is a food mechanics game disguised as a career choices game, or something that you're kind of trying to make the best kind of life for yourself in the form of good career, but actually the food aspect is the, as far as the game is concerned, is the more important aspect.
Yeah.
In there.
Or it's like, yeah, you became a CEO and you made millions, but you died at 50 and you never had the time to actually enjoy any of that money. So that could be one element of it.
Or you could go more fantasy route and it's a king at some place,
Yeah.
or some monsters raising hero. Whenever I start thinking about those prospects, I'm just thinking it's gonna be very complicated game,
Yeah.
and that makes me very worried. But we are not making this game. But also it's not in this. We should focus on this food mechanic, and the other stuff is more secondary. But these
Yeah.
are some kinds of ideas. Maybe it's a career game, maybe it's a career game in the fantasy world, but the food is actually the real player in this. No, not real player, but the more important system. That if you put your mind into that, you get to that true ending sort of place. That is, you get to live older than anyone else has ever lived
Yeah.
as a human, and whatever it is you get as a prize for getting there. But as long as you haven't reached 100 years, you're gonna live this kind of different life that you feel is the full purpose of the game, and it's very satisfying. The gameplay loop is satisfying. Then sure, that was a fun game then.
Yeah.
I'm just starting to think if we have any other anything to say about this food system or mechanic, because it's really, it sounds really nice right now. There's this aspect of different kinds of foods there has to be this fat and carbohydrates kind of scale, probably. That's
Okay.
actually what could also be discussed more thoroughly if you want, but
Yeah. Well, the macros, so proteins, fats,
Yeah.
and carbohydrates.
yeah, that's actually how depends on how deep do you wanna go.
Yeah,
As
that's the big
the
question.
simplest way would be just fatty or carbohydrate diet, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only two things you have to worry about.
Yeah.
And that could be also pretty interesting game with only that kind of distinction.
Yeah.
And the more you are on the fat side, the easier it's gonna be to fast and other aspects. But if you start putting your vitamins and salt, these ions in there, then you get pretty robust nutrition facts the game.
Yeah. One thing that might be maybe interesting is that there's all these sort of like hidden variables and hidden stats. So basically, there would be a lot of different kind of variables or stats there hidden behind the scenes. And if you play the game, if you do manage to make it far enough, then you sort of unlock this mode where all those stats are actually visible. So you're gonna
Yeah.
then play the game, seeing what everything does and what is the
Actually,
perfect
yeah.
balance.
Actually, the fat versus carbohydrates is very realistic, and because that's one thing people do calculate in their diets.
Yeah.
Lots of diets do that. They calculate how many fat you get and how much carbohydrates you get. Carbohydrates versus fat scale is kind of the scale you could put in the game from the get-go. That's one thing you have to worry about, and if you do that right, you live to some years, then you unlock, like you said, this other aspect or these other stats that tell you, oh, you have to take care of this and that and those as well.
Yeah.
But at the start of the game, it would be pretty nice to have this one scale you just, or
I mean,
maybe
actually, you could start the game with none of that, and it would just be calories. How many calories you've eaten, and then maybe at some point you actually lose that, and you're not seeing the calories anymore. Now you're seeing carbohydrates and fats.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
because that's actually also a good thing to not give all these stats from the start for your player, but give this very easy to understand stat.
Yeah.
And also the foods, if it's a candy bar, everyone knows it's a bad food. It's not very nice food compared to broccoli. If you have to choose between those, that's pretty natural. I think for most of the people who would play this game, that if you choose between the broccoli and candy bar, that you know which one will be better for you, but you have this curiosity of what if I only eat candy bars, or what
Yeah.
if I only eat broccoli. Our game should encourage that kind of experimenting.
Yeah.
And one important part is that it shouldn't take too long for one run to take, or at least, or if the one run is gonna be long, you can make corrections that correct your course perfectly towards the end goal. But yeah, I like more the idea of the roguelike or the rogue like style of playing one person's life,
Yeah.
and it's gonna take not too much of your time to live to 40 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
And of course you could save any time, so you can continue wherever you left off.
Yeah. Coming back to the meters, it might be interesting that the sort of stats open themselves up gradually. So at first you have calories, and then you get carbohydrates, and fats and proteins, so you can see, okay, what's like the amount of stuff I'm getting. But then you find out that the carbohydrates open up to sort of, you know, fiber and refined carbohydrates and so on. And the fats also to sort of different types of fats, and then you start seeing cholesterol in your body, and then, you know, what kind of cholesterol it is, and so on. So it could be like this very complicated system that opens up as you play.
But it's from the very start, all those numbers are meaningful. You're just not seeing them.
Yeah.
The game sees them and uses those to calculate your lifetime
Yeah.
for the life.
And if it's a roguelike, one thing that we could use to make it slightly less roguelike, which is something I liked in what was the game? Has Been Heroes. In that, yeah, it's a sort of like a roguelike. You have one run, but at the same time, every run you get more information. So in this game, it could be that, you know, all those stats or all that knowledge that you've accumulated, that sort of you regain those meters. Every gameplay doesn't start with just the calories.
Yeah.
So that might be, you know, encourage you to try out the game again and again, because now your character starts from the beginning, but you don't. You now have more stuff to go with, and you can actually play the start better because now you're seeing more information about this stuff.
But now this game is more about that food system.
Yeah, now it's just about.
We created a system for you. Now someone please make a game from this.
Free game, just make it. This has been All Basket Games. We were supposed to talk about something else, but we decided to make you a game system instead. So hopefully our sucky audio hasn't been all that sucky for the rest of the film, but that's been our fancy
talk about the food system we'd really like to see in the game.
Yes.
Maybe you got some ideas, and maybe you're a game maker and wanna make a game out of this idea.
Indeed.
Call us. Send us email. Or make your game and send that game to us and let us play it.
Yes, royalty free, I guess. Alright. So, thank you for watching. Bye bye.
Bye.